listening to Turning Hard Times into Good Times with your host, Jay Taylor. If you have a question or comment about today's show, Jay would love to hear from you at 1-866-472-5790. That's 1-866-472-5790. You can also send an email to questionsfortaylor@gmail.com. That's questions, the number 4, Taylor@gmail.com. Now, back to our program.
Welcome to this special segment of Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I am your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm speaking to you from New York City on this, the 20th day of December 2018. The purpose of this special segment is to gain some insights from one of Novo Gold's strongest supporters, namely Robert Moriarty. He is the proprietor of 321 Gold, which I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. Welcome, Bob, and thanks so much for joining me today.
Well, it's given the fact that gold's up $18, it's very timely, and it's a great pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you. I do want to talk to you about Novo's Karratha project in northwestern Australia. That's the big story, which, as Dr. Quinton says, is one of the most unusual gold deposits, if not the most unusual gold deposits in the world, at least in terms of the distribution of gold in that deposit. And Dr. Henning is a geologist who thinks outside the box, which is why he went to Australia to look for the next Witwatersrand deposit in the first place. Because this is such an unusual deposit, he has adamantly refused to follow conventional wisdom in terms of how to construct a resource. Most analysts simply write off Karratha, the project, as a non-economic project. You can't drill it, you can't sample it normally, so therefore it's not going to work. Dr. Henning, who put out a news release this morning, clearly doesn't buy into that. He is very optimistic about the economic prospects of the Karratha project and Egina, where he's focusing a lot of his attention now, near Karratha. You've been one of Dr. Henning's strongest supporters. What are your thoughts on the potential economics of Karratha in general, and why are the practitioners of conventional wisdom so wrong?
Oh, well, that's two questions. I can cope with one. I'm not sure I can cope with two in the same day. Okay. Here's the deal. Quinton Henning, Mark Creasy, and I sat down in June of 2009 in Mark Creasy's office, and we talked for hours about Quinton's theory about how the gold got into the Witwatersrand and Mark Creasy's ground in not just in Karratha, but all over the Pilbara Basin. That discussion formed the basis for Novo doing a deal with Mark Creasy, taking over a bunch of Mark Creasy's ground, and getting started in the eastern Pilbara. At the same time, Quinton was convinced it is another Witwatersrand, and he was sniffing around to see what else was going on. Here's the key. 150 years after the Witwatersrand and the Pilbara were discovered, they were discovered about the same time, 1886 and 1888. Nobody's absolutely certain of how the gold got into the Witwatersrand. They know there was a lot of gold there. They just know how it got there. And Quinton was convinced that because the Pilbara is the same age as the Witwatersrand, that you had the same potential for gold. I wrote about Novo sometime in I think 2011 or 2012, when they actually started doing things. And I said that I thought the stock was 45 cents a share then, and I thought that it was capable of going up somewhere between 10 and 100-fold, which was a pretty outrageous statement that I have never said of any stock before or since. Given the fact that I've been there 5 times since then, I will state categorically, even from today's price of $2 and change, the potential for it being a 10-bagger to a 100-bagger is still true, and the results from today prove it. Now let's talk about Karratha. Karratha is a alluvial project in hard rock mineralization. The gold is in reefs. The reefs are narrow, a few meters, and the gold is very large in size. The bigger the size of gold in a deposit, the harder it is to measure. Mm-hmm. If you can think of a cubic meter of material, which is the size of a coffee table, okay, if there was 30 grams of gold in there in one piece, how do you measure a cubic meter and find the gold?
Impossible.
Well, no, it's not impossible.
It's impossible using drilling techniques, which is the normal way that people set up their...
That's very good. Yeah. If you use conventional thinking, it is impossible. Now, yeah, I mean, you can absolutely measure it. You crush it down to 1/4-inch material, and there's your chunk of gold right there. But how do you know the gold's there in advance? And the answer is you can't know the gold's there in advance. The Karratha project and all of the conglomerate gold, the reef gold, you have to think in unconventional terms. Now let's talk about Novo stumbling, missing deadlines, saying they were going to release results and not doing them. When you do a gold project that's unconventional, you are going to stumble. I don't care if your initials are JC. It's hard to do because there isn't anything that you can do that will tell you exactly how to do it. Now, Novo has missed goals. They have made commitments for releasing results that they didn't do. They've made mistakes. They've spent a lot of money accomplishing very little. Those are all true. Also meaningless at the same time. It is an unconventional deposit. Now, I'm not going to sit here and be humble because I was saying a year ago, this is an unconventional deposit and it has to be approached in an unconventional way. And I will pound the table that it's just as true today as it was back then. But let's go to today's results. Can we go into talking about Edgina?
Yeah, let's do that. And in fact, I would like to ask you why Quinton Henning and Novo Resources is focusing so much on Edgina right now. Maybe you can talk about that, but talk about today's results. That's definitely what I want to hear from you about.
Yeah, because the results are important because the results are from Commonwealth and Purdy's Reward, and they're from Edgina. Now, if you remember, I was talking about this being an alluvial project in hard rock. That's what the gold in conglomerates is. The gold was laid down something like 2.6 to 2.8 billion years ago in gravel. Gravity, moisture, air, pressure, heat, volcanic activity have compressed those gravels into hard rock. However, if you go to Edgina, you've got the area that time and tide has weathered down, and the alluvials are no longer in hard rock. The alluvials are now in lag gravels. Okay?
Yeah, exactly, and that's what actually Quinton, when I last spoke to him, said Mother Nature has done the milling for us there.
Yes, absolutely. And the funny thing is, because processing alluvial is so cheap, and I'm going to go into the numbers, that Edgina is cash flow, and it's cash flow PDQ. Now, Novo actually has a permit to process 50,000 tons of material, and they will get started on doing that either in March or April, whenever it cools down enough in Australia. It's the Australian summer starting in a couple of days, and it gets bloody hot in Australia. Yeah. But in any case, he released the results. He had taken 170-ton, 95 cubic meter bulk sample, and he had run it through a machine that Novo already owns. Now, here's something that's going to be very important. When you're talking about hard rock anything, you always talk about tons. When you're talking about alluvials, because alluvials are nothing but dirt, moving dirt. You always talk about cubic meters or cubic yards, depending on where you are. So the correct terminology will be cubic meters, because it's a Canadian company and it's alluvials. So 95 cubic meters were tested. Now, I had sent you an email, not an email, I think something on Skype a few days ago, and I said that anything above half a gram would be successful if he didn't recover coarse gold, and if he did recover the coarse gold, anything above 1 gram would be a home run. Well, he's released the results, and I'm actually on his website, and I don't see the photos, but I'm going to put a piece up, and I've sent the photographs, if you can put them on your website. He segregated it into 4 different categories, and basically he has recovered the coarse gold. The biggest nugget was slightly over 40 grams out of 107.88 grams total. But here's the number. In 95 cubic meters, which is 170 tons, he recovered 107.88 grams of rough gold. Now, that works out to 1.14 gram per cubic meter. Now, he also knows that the grade of the gold is somewhere between, or the fineness of the gold is somewhere between 0.91 and 0.93. So I've used 0.91. If you take 1.14 gram per cubic meter, at today's price, $1,259.18 for gold, that works out to $40.48 per gram. If you take the $40.48 times 1.14 times 0.91, turns out that your revenue per cubic meter is $41.83 a cubic meter. Now, I've talked to several people. I've talked to Keith Barron, who actually operates a alluvial sapphire mine in Montana. And I've said, Keith, what does it cost you, all-in cost, to process 1 cubic meter? Now, because he's in the business, he should know. In Montana, it costs Keith Barron $10.70 U.S. per cubic meter. And talk to somebody who I think is an expert in Australia, who's very familiar with Australian costs and what the terminology and the licensing and permitting, everything else. And he said the cost per cubic meter in Australia, a very reasonable cost, would be $20 U.S. per cubic meter. You've got revenue of $42 a cubic meter, and you've got costs of $20 a cubic meter. You have a world-class home run project. I had told you that I thought anything over 1 gram would be a home run, and I believe this is a home run. Now, if he had come up with 3 grams or 4 grams or 5 grams, I wouldn't trust those numbers because we're not interested in a 95 cubic meter sample. We're interested in getting some background, something to measure the rest of the 1,000 square kilometers that he's got around Karratha. And I'm going to tell you the number of 1.14 gram per cubic meter is going to be a good background, a good number to work from. Some of it will be richer than that. Some of it will be less rich than that. But that will give investors a good idea of the potential and to edge it up. It will take a year to get some kind of deal with the locals, to get their approval and terms with them, and to get it permitted for bulk mining. But he can get started with a 50,000 ton bulk sample as early as April or March or April, and he will have figures and dollar amounts right then. And if you work out the 50,000 tons, it works out to revenue of about 1.15 to 1.18 million. It's not a big deal. It's not going to move the needle. Mm-hmm. However, it will show him exactly what the costs are going to be. And he will have, what he'll be doing at the same time is testing various areas to build up a reserve and to build up a resource number for the Australian Mining Department. Mm-hmm. But I think, if that's all the press release would say, I think it's a home run. But let's go into the other part of it.
Well, before we do, Bob, let me just ask you a couple of questions then. Can you give us a sense of what the size, the scope of this alluvial area is? I mean, what are we looking at here in terms of, we don't know the grade yet exactly, although Quinton seemed quite confident that whatever come out of this 170-ton sample would be pretty representative of the larger deposit. But how large is this thing? How large are these alluvials at Egina?
Okay, hang on just a minute because I'm going to do some translate. There's 1 million cubic meters in if you're a meter deep and you're a kilometer by a kilometer, you're 1 million cubic meters divided by 31.1. Okay, that would give you about 36,000 ounces per square kilometer.
Uh-huh.
Now, do you have new batteries in your calculator?
No, I don't.
You need to put new batteries in your calculator because it's 36,655 ounces per square kilometer, and he's got 1,000 square kilometers.
Okay, so the numbers are big, and of course, it's premature to draw any conclusions about how much gold is there, but at least this gives us some sense of the magnitude that may be there. I guess the big question in my mind and everyone's mind will be, how much variation from this 170 ton, and as you said, we don't know. It's going to be some is going to be larger, some is going to be smaller, lower grades.
Let me point something out because this is important to understand. The potential, and put the word potential in great big quotation marks
sure.
and in letters. The potential is 36,000 ounces per square kilometers of the 1,000 square kilometers. But at the same time, it could be more than that, or it could be half that. And I'll give you something to measure it by. If Bill Gates woke up tomorrow morning and he had lost half of his fortune, how much difference would it make to his lifestyle?
None.
Okay. If we were dead wrong and it was 18,000 ounces per square kilometer per 1,000 square kilometers, how much difference would it make?
None.
Absolutely none. Or alternatively, if we knew that the 36,000 ounces per square kilometer was accurate, but there were only 500 tons or 500 square kilometers, how much difference would that make? And the answer to that is, of course, none. We don't care. These are good numbers. It is economic. It's not marginally economic. It is wildly economic. And I know there are people out there who love throwing rocks at Quinton because these guys are green with jealousy. But Quinton has worked for a year on Egina. It was something I was familiar with in July of last year, and obviously I couldn't and wouldn't say anything about it. But these numbers reflect a home run.
All right, so let's get to the other topic you were about to talk about when I interrupted you, and that has to do with mechanical sorting that Quinton also reported. In fact, it was the first item on the press release today. Talk to us about mechanical sorting and why that is so important. Okay.
He released 4 samples, and the real key here is not grade. The real key here is how successful is mechanical sorting. On I had gone into it in the last article that I wrote. And here's what I want you to think about. If you go to the Witwatersrand, the actual mineralization is in like 0.2 to 0.4 of a meter. Okay. It's high grade, but it's in a very small reef.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know because we can't drill it and we can't measure it because of the nugget effect. We don't know exactly where or how big the mineralized zone is. But if you know that it's 0.4 and it's in this, say, 4 meter section, you can mine the whole 4 meters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But it costs you just as much to mine a meter of ore as it does to mine a meter of waste.
Mm-hmm.
So you want little waste as little waste as possible, as much ore, but you don't know where the gold is. And that is the problem, and that's going to be a problem for anybody and everybody, and that's why it hasn't been in production for 100 years, even though this thing was discovered 120 years ago. There is nothing new at Karratha. This is all stuff they knew 120 years ago. It hasn't been mined because how do you find the gold?
Yeah.
So what he's done, and this is absolutely brilliant, he's used this mechanical sorting machine, the Novo sorting machine. And I'm going to give you some of the technical factors. Okay, the first sample, 2.2% was greater than 63 millimeters. They have run enough samples through this machine that when a rock is greater than 63 millimeters, which is like 2.5 inches, the X-rays, the sensors cannot detect the gold.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's gold in there, that rock gets thrown away. And the key there is that it's only 2.2% of the rock that's greater than 63 millimeters. Mm-hmm. What you would do is you would reject that, crush it, and then run it through. 68% approximately is between 6 to 63 millimeters. And those are the ideal sizes for actually finding the gold. And then 30% of the material is less than 6 millimeters. And they do need to run the less than 6 millimeter material through again and see how much of the gold is in there and how effective the machine is. But what they determined when they run the test, they tested 5,610 kilograms of material. The sorted material, that is where the gold is, was in 13.5 kilograms.
Yeah.
So it's about 30 pounds. I mean, you could fit it in a 5-gallon bucket. and what it did is it sorted out 99.76% of the waste. Now,
wow.
That is a flipping home run out of the park, works brilliant. You still have the problem of what do you do with the less than 6 millimeter material, because 30% of the 5,600 kilograms
is less than 6
millimeters. You've got to do something with. But what he came up with from the gold grade out of the sorter was 792.4 grams per ton. Okay, so that's roughly 31 into 79. It's like 26 ounce gold per ton. Mm-hmm. That would absolutely be direct shipping, or it would totally take the issue of security out of the picture. No human beings would ever touch those rocks until they literally go to a smelter and they melt stuff down and pour the gold out of it. Now, the other results were less than that. The next sample was 188 grams to the ton. The next sample was 92 grams to the ton. The next sample was 377 grams to the ton. But you've got 6-ounce gold, you got 3-ounce gold, and you've got 12-ounce gold. Those are really excellent results. And that means the theory of going in and actually mining, say, 4 meters as opposed to 0.4 could be done successfully. You blast it, you crush it, you run it through the machine, and you backfill 99.76% of the material. That was an absolute home run. I know Quentin's taken a lot of grief. He's run into problems there. There have been personnel issues. There have been people who didn't tell him about problems. Granted, I mean, anybody who's pissed off because the stock went down is absolutely correct. However, at the same time, the company has about a $300 million market cap, and it is based on the strength of people's belief in Quentin Henney and this project, and they are absolutely correct. Now, I can't tell you whether the stock's cheap or expensive. I started buying the stock at 25 cents a share. I will state publicly now, for the record, it is still a 10 to 100 bagger. That doesn't mean go throw money at it when it goes up to $10 a share. Stock's cheap now. You know, if you buy things when they're cheap and you sell them when they get expensive, you'll make money.
Bob, let me just back up a little bit here with regard to the project and the sorting technology. Do you envision then the machine will be out there on site, and so that you are collecting the gold essentially through the sorting machine, concentrating it down like that, and then backfilling with the waste material right from the sorting machine that's out on site?
Yeah, and obviously you're going to have mining engineers design that.
Sure.
Here's what you're going to run into, and this is something nobody's ever discussed before. Because this stuff is in nugget forms and the specific gravity of gold is 19.3 or something like that, every time you move the gold, you're going to lose 10% of the gold. It literally is going to drop out of the excavators. It's going to drop out of the bulldozers. It's going to drop out of the dump trucks, and it's going to find its way into people's pockets. You want people touching it as little as possible, and you want to move it as little as possible. So I think the logical solution is, yes, they'll figure out how to do this. They'll move the machine out there, and they'll process literally as they go. You just have enormous problems when you deal with nuggety gold, because most people don't know this, but nuggety gold tends to fly.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I know it tends to find its way into people's pockets. I know that, but
well, it does that by flying.
Okay. All right. Well, listen. Anything else on this? I mean, summing this thing up, it looks really exciting, and I'm taking a look now at the stock price. It's up in U.S. money, 43 cents today. That's a 28% rise after this press release. It's obviously somebody's connecting. It's making sense to somebody. This is really exciting, Bob. I'm glad that we talked today. As you say, the timing is perfect.
Well, here's what's funny, and I want to give you a lot of credit. I'm not sure what turned you on to Novo. I'd like to believe that I had something to do with it. But if you hadn't been writing and educating people and giving people a different point of view than me, there's a lot of people. The guys that you put into Novo and the guys that I put into Novo are not whining, because they were getting in at 50 cents and 80 cents and $1 and $1.50. Now, if you bought into Novo at $8 a share, I know damn well why you whine, but don't whine to me, because I was telling you to get in at 45 cents. You have done a tremendous favor to Novo, to investors, and to the industry, and you absolutely picked a home run.
Well, absolutely, and I have to thank you, because you were the first newsletter writer, and you are also a person who thinks outside of the box, known as in some circles as Crazy Bob, but crazy like a fox, I would say, and And I think that, you appreciate people who think, not just follow conventional wisdom. And so, yes, you were instrumental in getting me to look at it to start with. And then I started just talking to Quentin Henning, he always had time for me. And he was always willing to take my stupid questions and explain it to me, how he was viewing this project. So, both you and Dr. Quentin Henning are the reasons that I got involved in this story, and it is a fascinating story. I mean, just the Quentin's theory about how the Wits was laid down was fascinating to me to start with, and was of course an out of the box thought process. So, Bob, before we let you go, if there's anything else you want to say about this project, but I do want to also ask you about the gold markets. Today we're seeing a big run up in gold. But as we head into 2019, how are the gold markets looking to you?
I'm going to say, in a way, you may be looking at the wrong thing. And here's why. We know that there's a bubble in real estate. We know there's a bubble in the stock market. We know there's a bubble in cryptocurrencies. We know there's a bubble in marijuana. There's a bubble in damn near everything. Mm-hmm. And I suspect the bubble that's bursting. And the real question is, if you knew the banks were going to close, if you knew bonds were going to go to zero, if you knew cryptocurrencies were going to go to zero, what would you want to put your money in? And my answer would be, you need to put it in something safe. Mm-hmm. I'm not a gold bug. I don't worship at the altar of gold. Mm-hmm. I just recognize that gold is money, mm-hmm. and I would rather have something real in my hand than some piece of paper. I said for 6 months that we were going to have a market crash starting in October, and I'm going to take some credit for that. I had it absolutely correct, and I'll just flat tell you right now, it's not over. Yeah. And it could get far worse, and when it does, people are going to want to head for safety. And I think safety is gold. And the real beautiful thing is, and that's where it's going to get stupid, the resource stocks are going to be the biggest beneficiaries. And the strange thing is, it's not the Novos that are going to be the greatest beneficiaries. It's the piece of crap 4-cent and 2-cent stocks that are going to go up tenfold, just because people want something real as opposed to something fake. So I think 2019 looks very good for gold, better for platinum, better for silver. They're exceptionally cheap right now. But 2019 gold stocks are going to be the winners for the year.
All right. Well, thank you, Bob. Thank you so much for your time. You've given us very generously about 30 minutes. So very good education here on all there is to know. Well, it's not all there is to know, but a lot of what is available and what is already known about the wonderful, very interesting, unique project that Novo Gold has down in the Pilbara of Western Australia. Thank you so much, Bob, for being with us, and I hope to keep up with you in the future some more. You've been down there many times. You've been on the ground, and I don't know of anybody that knows this project outside of Quentin Henning better than you do. So thank you so much for your time today, Bob.
Well, I want to tell you that your contribution is just as important. We are literally writing history, and I firmly believe, and everything that I've done, everything that I've seen since June of 2009 tells me this is another Witwatersrand. I believe Quentin is well on track to figuring out how to unlock it and turn it into money. And I'm really pleased to speak with you and really pleased to be part of this on such an interesting day.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Bob, for being with us. So, folks, that is all the time we have for this special show. Let me wish all of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I will be back with you on my regularly scheduled episode of Turning Hard Times into Good Times on January 8th. Alistair McLeod will be with me, Michael Oliver, and perhaps a surprise guest as well. Until then, goodbye and God's blessings to you.